we're very fortunate that Andy Reid was available. And in our first discussion, when I interviewed him in Philadelphia, it was just very clear to both of us that there was really good chemistry. And he knew some things about the organization. Mark Donovan, our president, had actually been in Philadelphia. So he had somebody in the organization at a senior level that he had some comfort with. And it was clear after several hours that, this was going to be a fit. There's a famous story with that interview, which was supposed to go for about 3 or 4 hours, and it ended up going for 9 hours.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hey guys, I'm Dustin Colquitt, and today I'm joined with Clark Hunt, owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. He wears several different hats in the facility, and I remember my first few years in Kansas City when he took over there in Kansas City and has just made major moves throughout the organization, not just on the football side, but the business side. And we're lucky enough to share a few minutes with him today in what is going to be a very historic week over there at Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday. We have a kickoff time. We know who we're playing now. And as per the usual, the last, it seems, 7-8 years, we have home field advantage, something that has become a priority that you guys talked about in training camp, and said, hey, if we can get home field advantage, and the road to the Super Bowl comes through Kansas City, which it has been. That's been our goal. It's something that you talk about every year. And thanks for joining us today, Clark.
Dustin, it's so great to be on with you today.
Yeah, I love the background. I see all the footballs, the memorabilia and stuff. I know that you guys are big into history. Your father, Lamar, was such a integral part, the main part of the Foolish Club that said, hey, we can compete with the NFL. We can get in there and do our thing. Got pushed out of Dallas, which is where you're from. And he decided that he was going to make Kansas City into a competitive football town that rivals any SEC. I came from Tennessee, 103,000 people in that stadium. And I remember coming to Arrowhead for my first home game against the Jets, and I couldn't hear what was going on the sidelines. It was unbelievable. Just the nature of that Midwest crowd, the barbecues, the tailgating, things that you all created really from scratch, leaving Dallas and coming to Kansas City.
Yeah, Dustin, you're exactly right. You mentioned the great home field advantage that we have playing at GEHA Field at Arrowhead, which is the loudest stadium in the world. Our fans, the Chiefs Kingdom, they know how to bring it, and I know the players and coaches, really appreciate the support. We're thrilled to once again have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Had the luxury of a bye this past weekend, and we're looking forward to getting the playoff campaign going with Houston on Saturday.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. It's a great matchup. I have never seen created ways to win that Andy Reid, Dave Tobe, Steve Spags, Nagy's back. You guys have been winning with backup kickers hitting doinks off the post. I mean, everybody in their seat. If you have your popcorn, you get ready. I remember my thing is when I'm punting, I don't want anybody to leave to the concession stand. Oh, 3 and out, we got a punt. I wanted them to watch something, fun, and I tried to stick as many balls as I could inside the 20-yard line. I remember one of my favorite stories of your dad. I think I've shared this years and years ago with you, but it was our first Friday practice. He was in town. I believe it was my rookie year, 2005. We were kicking the indoor because the weather had already kind of turned south in Kansas City, which really turns football up a notch in KC. Everybody loves getting geared up. They cut their little carpet squares out, put them on the ground so they don't freeze, and man, they're excited. But your father, you were in town, and I'm punting, and I'm actually punting in the indoor and hitting the insulation, the roof, over and over and over again. And Coach Vermeil didn't tell me, which I had earlier on in the year on this podcast, we don't kick inside. He just wanted me punting. And so Lamar comes up and kind of pulls at my jersey and he's like, hey, we don't want to kick inside because it kind of damages the roof and you could start seeing holes kind of everywhere. And so I said, yes, sir. Like I just didn't want to get any bad habits and like putting the ball in the return guy's hands really quick. And so I hit a couple balls straight to the return guy. And how competitive your father is, I remember him hitting me one more time and saying, hey, go ahead and punt. We don't want any bad habits. You go ahead and you do what you need to do. Just replace it before you leave.
That's a great story and sounds a lot like my dad. As you know, my dad was always a big fan of the kicking game. He'd been a kicker himself in high school. My older brother kicked in high school. I kicked in high school. So it was something he was really into. I spent a lot of time with him, working on my kicking form and particularly punting. We would stand about 20 yards apart and try to punt spirals back and forth to each other. It's one of those fond memories I have of my dad. So I'm glad to hear he got in a little coaching with you.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing because I literally saw him say no, and then he's like, if it benefits us, go. Like, do it. And it's, you were an All-American at SMU, soccer player.
Yes, I was. Now that was a long time ago, so I know I wouldn't be an All-American today. That's for sure.
No, you haven't aged a day, and I know that because when I was still with the Chiefs and we were in training camp, we had this thing. You would come in and Noble and whoever our kicker was, the snapper, they can't really do the juggling, all that stuff, but we would have a competition. We all signed it, and we would every year we'd try to beat our previous year. And so I don't think you can tell everybody here on Hang Time there. I know for one thing, there is not. You're a very young owner, and you are an integral part of the daily operations over there. I knew you guys. I thought you lived in Kansas City for the first time. I saw you guys so often with not only within that community, but at business meetings and making sure how you could tie everybody back into the fandom of Kansas City. And I reckon to say there is no other owner spending that much time, particularly during training camp, as much as you guys would do, juggling and interacting and speaking and doing all that stuff. That's coming from the owner on down. You can really say that you spent a lot of time here.
Yeah, well, my dad set a tremendous example for our family with the way that he was engaged with the franchise and also engaged with the community. And of course, as you know, something he really cared a great deal about was the organization giving back to the community. And he wanted to see the players and the coaches and the business staff out in the community, interacting with our fans, helping, take care of charities that have significant needs. And that's really a big part of his legacy. And I'm so proud to see the example that's been set by the current generation of Chiefs leaders, guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, who do so much in the community. And being around the team, frankly, it was always a lot of fun for him, just like it's a lot of fun for me. Training camp's a special time of year, right? It's the beginning where you lay the foundation. We'll have somewhere around 40 or 50 new players who are in and part of the Chiefs for the 4 or 5 weeks of training camp. And it's an important time. It's a time that, relationships are made. You mentioned the juggling we used to do to pass time. And one of my fondest memories of that goes back to 2017 when we had a young backup quarterback named Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick would come over and join us, even though soccer wasn't per se his forte. But he was just so competitive and was always looking for something to challenge himself. So we would get him, in the mix, juggling the ball with us. So that was a lot of fun.
And he's been competitive from day one on campus over there at One Arrowhead Drive. And it's fun watching him morph into, getting married, having kids. Now our texts have totally changed. How are the kids? How's Britt? How all that stuff. And I remember it's funny how a competitive athlete that doesn't have a lot of a soccer background, but his wife does. obviously, and he was hearing us get into like the 60s and 70s, and I think we got well into the hundreds at some point in that 2017, 2018. And I remember him just watching us just laying out on the turf trying to get to balls to try to keep that juggling going. And he came over and was like, "Hey, I didn't play, but anything I can do to help." And I'm sure, like anything he can be involved, anything he touches so far, it turns into gold. Um, you mentioned Travis Kelce, and I got to spend a little bit of time last Friday at Chiefs practice, punt a little bit, talk to Coach Tobe. You know, it was great seeing those guys. And one thing that one of the many things that you've been able to do is change uh, obviously the football culture in Kansas City. It was always a winning culture. I know Carl Peterson, did a great job of getting the community, involved, the outreach. But you mentioned Travis Kelce, and he's this year's nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Um, there's a hallway for those that have never been over to One Arrowhead Drive into our complex that splits the business and the football. And through that hallway, not only do you guys say it's important, like there was 5 appearances that I had to do mandatory when I signed my deal in Kansas City, and I was like, that's interesting to put in a contract. But I remember Carl Peterson saying, "Believe me, you're going to do more. Wait till you get engaged in the fans that we have here in the city. You're going to love them." And so I signed it, and I remember I think I did 20 or 30 events that year. Just I couldn't get enough of the energy that they bring. So this year's nominee, you have Travis Kelce. I think I was in there 3 times, but we have 5 members that have actually won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. We have in order Willie Lanier, Lynn Dawson, Derek Thomas, Will Shields, Brian Waters, and you've watched all of these guys play. And I remember sitting in that room my first year. I got to play with Brian Waters and Will Shields, and you guys managed to draft or in free agency bring guys in that buy into community, to culture, and are also great football players. Speak on to how you guys do that year in and year out.
Yeah, well, it's really a credit to our general manager, Brett Veach, and before him, John Dorsey, and before John, Scott Pioli, and Carl Peterson. Just the job that they've done over the last several decades of bringing in not only great football players but great individuals who really care about the community. You mentioned all those Walter Payton Man of the Year winners that we've had, and what an impressive list. Not only for the things that they've done in the community, but also what incredible players. All 5 of them, were on the field. And it's great to have Travis as the nominee this year. And we've had Patrick as the nominee in recent years. Both of them and several other of the team leaders really do a great job of giving back to the community. And I mentioned it earlier, but really that all started, with my dad and encouraging the players when the team moved to Kansas City in 1963. He really encouraged the players to get involved in the community and to give back. And guys like Lynn Dawson really, sought that opportunity out and set the example, which has now lasted for 5 decades. And it's great to see the younger members of the team embracing that today.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Every week we've done this Hang Time podcast. We always make sure we spotlight any philanthropic efforts that guys are doing currently in the city. I think it's amazing that you have guys that during the week can take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit and say, "Man, I just don't have time to do that." Yet week in, week out, I see this list. I talked to Chuck Castellanos, which you've had there, it seems like forever, just as long as Alan Wright, some of these people. And one thing that you've been able to do is retain so many vital people to that organization. They're really the lifeblood over there. And some of my fondest memories, I remember the first time I got, once we started having kids, we had Brinkley in 2006, Colston in 2008, Hartley 2010, KJ 2012, Cannon 2013. And I remember every year just interacting with your mom on the sidelines, your kids on the sidelines. Your kids were, I can't, when I get your Christmas card every year, it blows my mind at how big they are and what they're doing in the community. And really, I want to talk about Miss Norma right now, because she was just as much as part of making people feel at home than anybody. I remember those Christmas parties. They're asking for all your age groups, and I'm like, what? Or what's this for? And then we have a Chiefs party. Try to come if you can. You show over this Christmas party. Every kid, and Miss Norma knew all of our kids by name. Like that. I don't know how she was doing that, and I know she maybe had a little help, but that engagement and coming and having Santa and all the employees there and interaction to kind of give thanks back to them, that was a special thing that maybe some organizations do, but you guys are trailblazers for that as well. And that was some special moments for my kids growing up.
Yeah. Well, my mom was a special person, and along with my dad, what an amazing couple. And they shared the journey of pro football and the Kansas City Chiefs for over 5 decades. My mom was really there from almost the beginning when the team was back in Dallas. And then when the team moved to Kansas City, both my mom and dad became very focused on the community, but they also wanted our players and coaches to feel like the Chiefs were a family. And if you're a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, you were also a member of the Hunt family. That was something that was very important to both of them. And you referenced our Christmas parties, which are always so much fun. And I mean, you won't believe this. This year's party, we had over 1,000 in attendance, which included all of our employees, their spouses, and their kids. So the Chiefs family has definitely grown. But it's so special to get to spend time with our employees' families, and get to meet them and their children. That's just really a special opportunity for us, and something that was important to my parents. And my mom was really the perfect match for my dad. First of all, she loved sports. She loved pro football. She was really competitive in her own way. She was a true Raider hater. Absolutely. She also didn't like the referees a lot of the times. We had a doll in our suite, and it was a ref doll, and you could pull the arms and legs off of it. And I think my dad given that to her, so yeah, she would take that doll and give it a work over. But anyhow, she loved pro football as much as she loved my dad, and loved being around the players and coaches and everybody associated with the organization.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just remember her being such a special lady, and it was fun just interacting with her, and just with all of the Super Bowls that she had been to, all of the home games. And when you guys would travel away, I just thought that was amazing. How you brought, the family was always, right there close behind. And I want to talk now a little bit, segue. I know you guys have been in soccer. You guys have stuff in soccer and tennis. And I just recently went with Lamar Jr. to a hockey game. That was an unbelievable atmosphere. And when you meet the people, either standing by the elevator, the MC down on the ice, like, you guys have a knack for hiring out just some of the most loving people, no matter what venue, or any of your siblings, or Miss Sharon with all the art. The art thing fascinates my dad. He was an art major at Tennessee. He actually, the NFL one year in 1982 had a art exhibit that they wanted anybody that, painted or drew or anything like that, everybody would contribute. And the winner of this competition would actually find their way in. They said, we're going to put whoever wins this competition, you're going to be in Canton Pro Football Hall, like in Canton. So my dad paints this Knoxville background of the mountains and stuff, because that's where we're from, East Tennessee. And they called him about a year later and said, hey, I don't know if you've heard, but you won the competition and your artwork is now up in Canton. And he was thrilled. And so he goes up to Canton. That's my first pictures in Canton. I'm a little baby. I'm not even 1 year old. He's got this art piece. They called him 3 months later and said, by the way, your art piece was stolen out of Canton. And he was like, oh no, well, how many people actually, we're in this competition. And they said, you were the only one. So my dad was like, oh, I wish I didn't ask. I thought I actually won this competition. But it reminded me of my dad. Most of the time when he'd come to games up in Kansas City, he was walking around the art gallery that you guys created. You have found creative ways to keep everybody engaged when they're there, whether that's watching or during a timeout, coming back through there. In 2010, I believe you broke ground and did a lot of stuff to the concessions and the bathrooms, and you've had this machine kind of moving. And then we get to a 2010 meeting where you decide, you said, where are we going to go from here? And you had an idea. I remember you telling me, you said, we're not a small market team and we have big changes coming on the horizon. And Mark Donovan was already in our doors. I'd been able to work with him a couple years prior to 2012. And you said, I can't tell you what, but big changes. And you ended up, I think January 6th, hiring Big Red Andy Reid from Philly, and he brought a lot of his people with us. Talk about that huge decision. You have a bunch of them. And this is huge for the Kansas City area, but you said we're bringing training camp back to our fans. Not that we don't have fans everywhere, but we want them right in the center so people are coming back into Kansas City and getting used to how awesome Kansas City is. So we can talk about training camp briefly, and also that big hire of Andy Reid that really has put us on a whole nother trajectory here.
Yeah, you're right that was really an inflection point for the franchise. We'd have a couple of years where things didn't go well, and I knew that we needed a change in leadership. As you mentioned, we'd been fortunate enough to have hired Mark Donovan as the president of the club a few years before the end of the 2012 season. But as we got to the end of that season, I knew we needed to make some changes. The first change that I felt was important was to change the leadership structure of the team. For the first 4 or so years of the franchise, the head coach had always answered to the general manager. So my dad would hire the general manager, and the general manager would hire the head coach, and that was the reporting structure. After having experienced that for a few years myself, I really felt that it would be best if I had a direct line to the head coach. And so I changed the structure so that the head coach and the general manager would be on the same level, along with the president. So the three of them would all report directly to me. And of course, on the football side, the general manager and the head coach would need to work together to do all the things that happen during the course of a football season. So I made that change in the reporting structure. We went out, had a great search process. We're very fortunate that Andy Reid was available. And in our first discussion, when I interviewed him in Philadelphia, it was just very clear to both of us that there was really good chemistry. And he knew some things about the organization. Mark Donovan, our president, had actually been in Philadelphia. So he had somebody in the organization at a senior level that he had some comfort with. And it was clear after several hours that this was going to be a fit. There's a famous story with that interview, which was supposed to go for about 3 or 4 hours, and it ended up going for 9 hours, which sounds like a very long time. We were at an FBO at an airport in Philadelphia, and there was a plane out on the tarmac waiting to take Andy to the West Coast, where he had a couple of more interviews later in the week. And our interview was going so well that he just never got on that airplane. And that was on a Wednesday, and we agreed that on Friday, he and his wife, Tammy, would come to Kansas City. He would see the facilities. Tammy would get to see the city. And by the end of the day on Friday, we had a signed contract. And that was really, the pivot point for the success that we've had going forward. Andy really helped me change the culture of the organization. Of course, he's somebody who had tremendous experience, was a proven winner. had been to a Super Bowl, had been to NFC championship games, and he just brought that mentality to the organization. And we were coming off of a 2-win season in 2012, and we start 2013 and we win 9 straight games. It was just it was hard to believe, and I know you were part of that, and just how special that was. And I think that just speaks volumes, to what a great leader, what a great coach Big Red is. So that was definitely a pivot point for the franchise. Came on the heels of a very significant renovation of GEHA Field at Arrowhead, which you alluded to, and really, started this special time that we've been in here for the last 12 or 13 years.
Yeah, it is amazing. And, to his wife, Miss Tammy, is wonderful too, just like Tavia. Like, we have some really great leading ladies in that organization that you just don't hear about, a lot, or either around the league or across sports and stuff like that will really make you feel like home. I remember the first time whenever that 2013 season, I mean, Tammy Reid was bringing cookies in for people. And now I went back Friday, and now all the coaches, it's the biggest family that we've created. You created a free agency destination. I remember, back from 2005 to 2012, we had some really good drafts, some big draft picks, some good, but now it seems like we don't miss very much. I mean, you're not missing. And I know that Tammy makes all the wives feel at home. Tavia makes all the wives and significant others within the organization somewhere that you want to be, you want to spend time. Guys, James, I've never seen James Winchester, Harrison Bucker. Those guys are staying way past 3 and 4 o'clock on Fridays. Usually they tell them to get out. Nobody's leaving. Everybody wants to stay in that place. It's almost become a sacred place. And when Andy Reid first got here, I remember he started throwing stuff in our jersey like "Be Great." Our slogans were "Work to Win." Then you have back-to-back, and now we have something super historic that's never been happened in NFL before. We have a chance for a three-peat. The return on investment that you have put into hand-selecting people and bringing them to Kansas City is not only paying dividends, but you're building something for all of Chiefs Kingdom that's fun to watch now leak into Germany, and the fandom that you guys have when you play in London or overseas. And some owners don't want to be a part of some of that international game, or say like, oh man, that's going to be tough. You guys have embraced it, and man, they have embraced you. Talk about some of that international flair, that the decisions that you made in 2013 now find us not only securing home field advantage throughout the playoffs, but also in different markets that we never thought we'd maybe be a part of.
Yeah. Well, the international focus has been a long-term goal of the National Football League, and I can think back to the 90s when the NFL had the NFL Europe League. Was the approach back then. Teams would play some preseason games. In fact, the Chiefs played a couple preseason games in Japan. They played in Berlin. They played in Monterey. And, that was a way to build a little bit of a fan base, but they weren't the real games. It was a preseason game, and so it didn't have the impact of playing regular season games, which the league started doing almost 15 years ago. And from the Chiefs standpoint, anytime we've had an opportunity to play an international game, I've thought it was a good thing for the franchise long term, because we're about growing the Chiefs Kingdom, growing our fan base, growing our brand. And a great way to do that is to show your best product internationally. Last year, we had the game in Frankfurt against Miami, which was a tremendous experience for everybody in the franchise. And I know it really helped grow our fan base in Germany. The league 3 or 4 years ago let teams apply for the marketing rights to different countries. And the Chiefs had the marketing rights to Germany and the surrounding countries there, as well as Mexico. So we've put a lot of effort into those two markets, and playing regular season games has really helped accelerate that. But talking about international makes me think a lot about my dad, because back in the 90s, he was a big fan of the NFL growing internationally. He thought it was good for the league. He thought it was good for the Chiefs. And that was definitely a time period, where a lot of other teams and certainly a lot of coaches, didn't want to be bothered with the inconveniences of taking a team, across the Atlantic to play in Europe. That just, very much messes up the traditional football schedule. And I have to say thank you to Andy Reid because even though Andy is very much of the attention to details, creature of habit, likes to do things a certain way, when we've had the chances to play internationally, he's been all good with it. And I think he's such a great coach that he figures out how to manage the schedule so that you still get the work in that you need to get in during the week. But even with the disruption of having to fly internationally. So I think it's just another testament to his greatness as a coach.
Yeah, I remember the first time we went over there to London, played in Wembley Stadium, which is kind of like a dream come true as a former soccer player. And I know same for you, just being on that pitch. There's something different about kind of that feel. I remember we were 1-5, and we had a meeting. We had a team meeting right after that loss, going into this game that we knew we were flying over on Thursday to play. And Andy said, "Hey, we're not panicking. Like we're good, and hey, we're gonna go, and we're not gonna lose again. We got to do this thing right." And I remember there was no panic in his voice. We thought we were gonna get yelled at and start pointing fingers and stuff like that, which is not his game. It was just one of those things like, what does this meeting entail? He said, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna win, we're gonna get a bye, and we're gonna clean streak. We're gonna beat everybody, and we did that 11 straight games. I will never forget looking into his eyes going like, he's dead serious. And we all, as captains, as a captain of his room, I was like, we're doing this. And I could not believe just the laser focus that he had using that international game to catapult us into an 11 straight victory. I know you're pressed for time. I wanted to let you know that I'm actually working on some stuff, London and Germany right now, with dairy farmers over there on both sides. I want to try to do a Place 60 element over there to engage more fans. I have a couple of venues over there that we're working on playoff kick for tickets kind of type deal over there. Anything I can do to help Chiefs Kingdom. The last thing, I know you're busy, and man, this is one of the most exciting weeks that I can ever remember, and just a historical banner line of a three-peat possibility. Is I want to talk about the Hunt Family Foundation Spring Grant Cycle. In 2025 will mark the third year that the Hunt Family Foundation will hold a Spring Grant Cycle for deserving local charities. Last year alone, 14 area agencies received vital funding via this initiative. I remember when I was first in Kansas City, you've done it forever, but that raffle that you guys done has been amazing. And in this year, regular season alone, that effort, $1.2 million. That is wild of imaginations. It's not something that you have to do. It's something that you want to do. And your promissory note coming from Dallas to Kansas City is we are going to be involved and change our community. Red Wednesday, so 2024 marked the 33rd anniversary of Red Friday, which morphed into Red Wednesday this year to the kickoff. When you win the championship, you play on Thursday, and then you get an early kind of built-in short weekend, which we've enjoyed how many times over the last 6-7 years, a bunch. And then this effort raised $1 million for Ronald McDonald House Charities of Greater Kansas City this year alone. And then finally, we have to talk about the three main ladies in your life that do the Chiefs style lounge. I was there. I still have the wine cups that you guys give out, all the presents to all the significant others and husbands that play for you on Mondays, Thursdays, and it seems like every day we're planned out. Wednesdays, Sundays, Mondays. During those early years that you're talking about, when we were 2-14, 4-12, sometimes we wouldn't have a Monday night game. Now we might only have 1 o'clock game, and if we're playing in Denver, a 2:30 game. Everything else, you're on prime time. And not only do you have time for that, but you have the Chief Style Lounge that celebrated its 13th edition over the Chiefs bye week this year. It's hosted by the NFL TV personality Kimmy Chex. And this year's event highlighted National Women's Small Business Month by engaging several local women-owned businesses, which is wild. Can you talk about how effective your girls have been and Miss Tavia at striking that up and something else that Chiefs fans can really be looking forward to every year?
Yeah. Well, you started off mentioning the Hunt Family Foundation, which is the organization that we've really organized all of our charitable giving through the Chiefs. And that has grown significantly over the last 10 to 15 years. Historically, the Chiefs children's game, where the Chiefs take a preseason game and partner with a charity to raise money to support them, had been our biggest charitable effort. But in recent years, Red Friday, or as you mentioned, Red Wednesday, has really become one of the cornerstones of the foundation, raising, as you mentioned, $1 million for Ronald McDonald House every year. And then the Style Lounge, which you alluded to, is another prong of that. Really something that my wife and daughters have enjoyed being part of. It includes a lot of the Chiefs women's organization is a big part of that. This year's event, had, 500 people in attendance, and it's really an opportunity to celebrate football and fashion, particularly from a women's fashion standpoint. And, my wife has really enjoyed helping, make that grow over the last 12 or 13 years, something that she has a lot of interest in. I'll tell you, one of my personal favorite parts of that fashion show is when alumni like yourself come back and model in the fashion show. And even bring your family to do that. That's always one of the special parts. And the people who attend that fashion show love seeing our alumni doing that. So hopefully I'll see you on stage next year.
I'm in. If that's an invitation, I'm in. I'll do anything to support, what you started. I tell a lot of people, like when they ask about you and your family and stuff like that, it's like, man, what you see is what you get. They're the most genuine people that I've ever met. And it's amazing how, you do a lot of business work. You have this unbelievable franchise that you work with. You have three other great siblings, and it's fun, even down to your kiddos when they share their faith. Out in the open like that on social media, Instagram, and stuff like that. And you're a great dad too, and so that's if anything, that's one of the big why I'm a huge fan. We really appreciate you coming on Hang Time and kind of jamming with us today. Best of luck. I will be there. I'm gonna bang the drum the best I can, and cannot wait to see you guys, see your family, and also just see Arrowhead in its greatest form.
Yeah. Well, Dustin, it's great having been on with you today. And as you mentioned, we have a very special week coming off. We get to kick off our playoff campaign this Saturday, and we're going to do it the right way with you banging the drum. So look forward to that. Look forward to seeing you and your family.